Okay, I notice my author and my moderator's over there, so it's safe to introduce Inez Fred, our moderator. We are delighted that Inez Fred has agreed to moderate our health and wellness panel. She is a marketing specialist at Martin Health System and previously served for 8 years at the Treasure Coast newspapers in various communications and marketing positions. She is a graduate of the Academy of Art and Design in Montreal, Canada. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Fred, who will introduce our panelist, Dr. Stephen Masley.
Thank you, Noreen. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much. And congratulations to the Martin County Foundation for 25 years. It's a tremendous honor being here. And this is the 23rd Bookmania, which I am super privileged to be a part of. Let me introduce our special guest for the morning, somebody that when I started reading his book, I even got more excited about participating this morning because I knew that it would make the experience of getting better even richer. Dr. Stephen Masley. His bio is in your program this morning, but I want to also mention that he has many, many, many accomplishments and awards and has published many documents. This isn't his first book, and with his practice in St. Pete, he really does know how to make us all better and live longer. Dr. Masley, please join me on stage.
Well, I'm delighted to be here too.
Thank you.
This is great.
When I was preparing for this morning, I was recalling when I was first invited to be a moderator by Dennis Fruitt. I quickly and perhaps too eagerly accepted. At that time, I wasn't aware of the two accomplished authors that were going to be on the panel, and I did my homework and became very intimidated very quickly. I have to admit, though, the avocado on the front of Dr. Masley's book sold me immediately. I love avocados. I do want to do a quick shout out to Dr. Hamblin, who is unable to be here this morning. He is also a very accomplished writer, and for his age is really moving and shaking the healthcare world and the journalism world. He kind of is where the media and information meet. His book is also for sale here and is also fascinating and really interesting. Has some crazy questions in there that I know you'll enjoy reading about. And I also want to mention that you can follow him on Twitter and Dr. Masley on social media and Dr. Masley's co-author, Johnny Bowden, on social media as well. That's where you can sign up for their blogs and get to know them even better than you will today afterwards at the meet and greet. Smart Fat. That's a really compelling name for a book. It sort of wants us to dig deeper and questions what we already know about what we eat. And as I was reading it, it really did reinforce how I felt about the diet choices I was trying to make in my life. And one or two of the things I really enjoyed about it was that there are no hard and fast rules, which is super if you're considering a lifestyle change, and that the guidelines make a lot of sense, common sense, practical sense, healthy sense. As I was reading and doing some homework going online and reading your other book also, you've done a tremendous amount of research, and you've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of patients over your career. What was the inspiration for writing a book like this? Was there a moment that you said, wow, this is something that's super important. I need to tell people about this.
Well, I think there's a crisis in America today, and that's that we suffer from accelerated aging, that people are getting old before their time, they feel worse, and it's way out of proportion to the normal aging process. And the standard American diet is just killing us in a rapid fashion, and our health's deteriorating nationwide. We have an epidemic of diabetes. We have an epidemic of Alzheimer's, the scariest disease on the planet. Heart disease is still the #1 killer for men and women, even though we can prevent 90%. So we really obesity is still increasing in a problem. And it's mostly because we're eating the wrong food. So there's a crisis out there. I think it's essential we do something about it. And I really want to make a difference for every, man, woman, and child out there, not just in this audience, but nationwide, and make a difference for us, because I think we are facing a tipping point where there's almost no return. It's about to ruin our budget as well as our health. So it's a crisis.
Throughout, you sort of did a perfect segue for me. Throughout your book, you reference many, many different heart conditions and health concerns and health issues. And as consumers, and I'm sure many of you in the audience, perhaps that's why you're here, we get inundated with what we should be worried about now, whether we see it on television, we read it in a magazine, we see it on Facebook, where so many people do get their news today. We just seem pummeled with all kinds of very scary conditions, and it can be alarming, and we don't know where to turn first. What is the most important health concern of our time today?
Well, the biggest concern today is that blood sugar levels are continuing to rise. Insulin levels are going up to try to accommodate that. And that's creating a whole host of health problems. Because of that, diabetes is much more common. Alzheimer's disease is projected to increase 300% in the next 25 years. That's going to be devastating to all of us. It's not just for those people who get it, it's for their family members as well. It's so hard. Cancer rates, are really intimately. So this small elevated blood sugar level, which we're kind of ignoring and we're not treating from a medical perspective, is going to have an amazing impact on health. So heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, it's devastating. And it's completely preventable. We, just following the simple tools in this book, really easy to follow, and we can prevent most of the 90% of heart disease and at least probably 60 to 70% of dementia and memory loss. So we really have a huge opportunity to make a difference for ourselves and for the people we love.
That's amazing to hear that they're sort of all connected, if you will. They're interrelated, and they can all be proactively amended or changed, or we can change our outcomes by changing how we eat and how we look at the food we eat and how we are more aware and self-conscious and self-aware of when we go to the grocery store, what choices to make and things like that. And sometimes I can speak from my own experience when I hear something on television or in the newspaper and I get alarmed by a particular health concern, or perhaps for my husband, I turn to a diet. Who hasn't turned to a diet at one point in their life, whether it was just simply to lose some weight or to be proactive about changing a particular health concern? In my research, I went online and I Googled various diets, and there were dozens and dozens of lists, just of lists that listed the 10 top diets, which I thought was like, how do I manage the lists of the lists? And then I turned to my own bookshelf, and I had 5 diet books in there, which I thought was, I don't even remember buying some of them, but evidently I was compelled to that particular day. How do we make sense of all of these diets? Some of them have great names like the Mediterranean diet or the South Beach diet, which you reference. Who doesn't want to look like somebody on South Beach, right? And then there's all these other diets, Atkins, paleo, macrobiotic, vegan, and there's dozens of them. How does your diet plan, and maybe I shouldn't use the word diet plan here, I should say health plan, stand out from all the others?
Well, what you'd really like is something that's easy to follow. It shouldn't be a wacko, you have to stand on your head and there's 49 foods you can't ever have. You could make it way too difficult to follow, which I think a lot of authors do, trying to be sensational. But mostly you want something that's proven. You want something that's been absolutely proven to work, that you can count on. And I think one thing different about SmartFat is it's based on the clinical data in my clinic. I've done dozens of clinical trials using this program. We've used it for diabetes and with people with advanced diabetes and reversed it. So they were medication-free and off. One of my pet peeves is these commercials that says, diabetes, you can't cure it, but we can manage it. That drives me insane, because I've helped thousands of people totally reverse type 2 diabetes, and they're not on meds anymore because they just eat healthy food and they're active and they do the right things. So I think a proven program. Our patients have lost weight, their blood pressure's better, their cholesterol's better. I'm helping them get off of their medications instead of start new ones. We know that we've shrunk artery plaque. We have hundreds of people who have shrunk their artery plaque by more than 10%. So their hearts and arteries are literally 10 years younger.
Wow.
I'm working right now on a new book on brain health because my average patient's brain performance improves 25%. So we can not only help prevent memory loss, but make you mentally sharper and more productive by adding the right food. So really, you want something that's been proven and published and presented at meetings like the American Heart Association, American College of Nutrition, American Academy of Family. You want a proven program that's easy to follow and makes sense. It's not some weird concoction of ideas. If you get those three things, proven, easy to follow, and makes good common sense, I think that's what you should be looking for. If we're going to ask you to change how you eat and live, that's a big ask, then we should make it easy and have proven data that you can count on.
Right. And one of the questions that comes up, it's probably a question that we all have when we first see the cover of the book, Smart Fat. To me, that implies that not all fats are created equal, and that maybe what we think we know about fat, staying away from fat, may not be true. Tell us a little bit about the good, bad, and the ugly of fat.
So let me address that in a second. So let's first start with what about low fat? Mm-hmm. So I used to work at I was the medical director at the Pritikin Longevity Center. For years, I tried to teach low fat, don't eat fat, avoid fat. I really wanted to be doing research to compare a low-fat diet with more of a Mediterranean diet. And I think the Mediterranean diet has clearly won that competition. But the biggest challenge was no one could follow it. You know, we had patients who would come and pay big money to stay at the Pritikin Center, and more than 95% were unable to follow it. It wasn't satisfying. I mean, I did a chef internship at the Four Seasons. I like to cook. I want your food to taste fantastic so you look forward to eating it, and your family and friends love it too. I mean, that's essential. And if without fat, it doesn't taste great. Mm-hmm. And without fat, we tend to have two main problems. Inflammation goes up and blood sugar levels goes up. And those are the two primary causes of accelerated aging. So smart fats, in contrast to dumb fats, lower inflammation and improve blood sugar control. So the bad fats, the easiest ones I didn't like, hydrogenated fat, the old margarines, the old-fashioned Crisco, the things that we were told to eat in the 1980s that turned out to be absolutely bad information. So those are out. And then we're really looking more carefully at all of these animal fats that come from feedlots, where we feed animals pesticide-enriched grain, we give them hormones, up to 6 growth hormones every day to make them fatter. And when we eat those, we get the toxins, the pesticides, the Roundup, and the hormones. So feedlot-fed animals maybe is another fat to avoid. The neutral fats, here's the big surprise. Almost all the data shows that heart disease is not worse if you ate more saturated fat, like from clean animal protein, like grass-fed beef, cage-free poultry and eggs, wild fish. There's no association between them and heart disease. I mean, that was all misinformation we had for the last 25 years.
It's amazing.
So they're neutral fats. Organic butter. Now, I'm not saying butter's good for you. There is no data to that effect, but at least it's neutral. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to benefit your health, if you want to lower inflammation, nourish your brain, improve your blood sugar, you need more smart fats. So smart fats are those fats that have proven benefit. You've been looked at studies, and we tried them, like nuts, almonds, pecans, walnuts, pistachios, hazelnuts. All of them have clear, proven benefit that you should eat them more often, 1 to 2 handfuls a day. The dark chocolate. I mean, who's going to be worried about eating dark chocolate? It's got to be at least 74 to 80% cocoa. Is really good for your heart and your brain. Mm-hmm. That wild fish like wild salmon and sardines are really good for you. That extra virgin olive oil actually doesn't only protect your heart, it decreases your risk for Alzheimer's.
I love hearing that dark chocolate is good for you. I'm going to Castronova's
So
right
I
after
want you
this.
to have 5 servings of smart fat every day. Your brain is more than 50% fat by weight, and it's 40% fish oil by weight. So we need these healthy fats for brain function, for lowering inflammation. So I think the idea of a low-fat diet is just so past tense in the scientific literature. It's time to move on and now choose the smart fats that make your food taste fantastic. And I'm very proud of the recipes in here. I worked really hard on these recipes. And I think you're going to find that your family's going to love easy to prepare meals that taste fantastic, that nourish your heart, brain, and soul. That's the goal.
And some foods have double duty.
They
So
do.
I'm going to bring up dark chocolate again, just because that's now my focus. Sorry about that, Dr. Masley. There are foods that do double duty.
Yeah.
And
Dark chocolate's one of them.
exactly.
Yeah, so it not only is it rich in smart fat, it's also rich in fiber. So if your eating plan was to be smart, you couldn't just eat smart fats. I mean, come on, we all know that would be not enough. To be truly smart, you have to add fiber, especially from vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts, not from flour, but vegetable, fruit, beans, and nuts. We need more of those smart fiber sources. And dark chocolate is also a great source of fiber. And I would actually say dark chocolate is a triple benefit because it's also flavor. You can add cocoa to things. Cocoa is really beneficial to our brain and our arteries. So we should be adding more cocoa to dishes as well. You could put a spoonful of dark cocoa in your coffee. You can actually make desserts with it.
Right.
So adding flavor. So we want our food to taste fantastic, be really good for your health, and be easy to prepare. And cocoa is a triple win. I would say dark chocolate's a triple winner.
I would say we would all agree on that. This brings up a good topic, a good segue, another good segue. You've done this before. Food myths, or as I would like to say, to be sort of more politically current, alternative facts. Alternative facts might not be for politics anymore, it's also for health and nutrition. What are some, we've been talking about low fat, avoiding fat. That's something that's been sort of hammered into us culturally, that's something we should have, that we should be doing, but now we learn that we shouldn't be doing. There are some other things out there that might be confusing us. What are some others that come to mind? One, just an example, to get this conversation going, vegetable oil isn't really vegetable oil.
No, vegetable oil is not actually vegetable oil at all, and it's most commonly very inflammatory. So using vegetable oil will make your tissues more inflamed. It'll accelerate your aging. Your body will hurt more. Your brain will shrink faster, and your arteries will grow plaque more quickly. So I would not recommend vegetable oil by any stretch. My favorite cooking oil is probably avocado oil. It tolerates very high heat. It's very rich in monounsaturated fats, just like an avocado. It has a very pleasant, neutral flavor. It's really nice to cook with. It doesn't smoke. You know, so a lot of the oils that we cook with can be damaged with heat, and avocado is not.
I'm going to try that in my popcorn tonight.
So it's an awesome oil to cook with. And then I would use extra virgin olive oil like on salad dressings, or if I wanted something to taste really Mediterranean-like, I might cook initially like my onions and spices and protein with avocado oil a little bit, and then add at the end when I reduce the heat to simmer. That's when I would put on the extra virgin olive oil so you don't damage that oil.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that we're learning through all of our channels lately is that sugar's not so good for us, but the alternative sugars are not a solution either. Sometimes they're even worse. And when I finished reading your book, I threw out my agave syrup.
Thank goodness.
So I don't know if any of you have agave syrup and you've maybe been fooled into thinking that that's a better alternative. Apparently it's not.
Well, agave doesn't have glucose in it, so you don't raise blood sugar levels. Instead, it's a fructose-only sweetener that the body it only really comes from like the agave cactus, which people have really not run around just chopping up and eating for millennia. So it's not a food source that humans have eaten in any way, in any substantial way over time. So we don't know how to process it. But when we use it, here's the irony. It converts all that energy directly into fat, and the fat gets stored in your liver, so it gives you fatty liver. Basically, when you use agave, you're turning your liver into pate.
So maybe one of the big health concerns is marketing professionals, because we tend to spin things where the sugar industry wants to go one direction. So we now highlight something like agave
Yeah, but
and
spin
trick
is a
people.
relatively favorable term. I think it's
Misguided.
The public is constantly being misguided with misinformation to sell products like whole wheat bread or whole wheat crackers or agave for some alleged health benefit,
Right.
when truly we have no business eating those.
We've been fooled into thinking they're better.
Yes.
You mentioned clean proteins. What should we be looking for when we know we have to take care of clean proteins?
So grass-fed beef, cage-free, organic-fed poultry and eggs, wild fish, those are clean. That's if a pig is sent to, let's look at one breakfast example, bacon. So bacon would normally come from a pig that was raised in a cubicle about half the size of this table. It's being fed highly pesticide-enriched grain, sprayed with Roundup, and then injected with up to 6 growth hormones every day, all of which are in the fat, making that animal's fat toxic. If that wasn't bad enough, when you slice it up thinly, it would break down quickly. Bacteria would grow on it. So they spray it with nitrosamines, nitrates. And the nitrates are what causes insulin resistance, diabetes, and a huge accelerated rate of Alzheimer's. So here's a toxic food that causes diabetes and Alzheimer's, and it's like the American favorite breakfast. So you could get pasture-raised pork that is not treated with nitrates, and then your bacon would be totally neutral, harmless, compared to something we've done by chemical processing that's really unfortunate.
And we've been told to stay away from eggs also.
But that's crazy. Well, if we're going to have cage-free organic fed eggs, then it's healthy fat, it's great protein. Eggs are back on the menu.
Can we eat the yolk as well?
Absolutely. The yolk is full of lecithin and healthy fat, so it's a smart fat.
We need it.
That nourishes our brain, especially for children, babies and moms who are pregnant women and moms nursing. You actually increase the IQ of your child by consuming more eggs. So very important, but they should be good quality, cage-free, organic fed, not eggs that have been sprayed, the hens were sprayed with chemicals every day.
So I want to clear some other myths up that sort of are in my own mind, which can be scary. Woke up early this morning, walked the dogs. I noticed that the marathon had started very early this morning, the Treasure Coast Marathon. And I wondered that when these people were preparing for the marathon, how on earth did they have time for breakfast? And then I thought, is breakfast still the most important meal of the day? We've been taught that since school days, early school days.
Well, so what do we, when you eat breakfast, there's a little fudge factor. You could go work out first and then eat breakfast, or eat first and work out. That doesn't matter so much. But to have breakfast revs your metabolism. When you skip breakfast, when you have a fast, it has an impact on you. So I think we want something to eat to jumpstart that. I think there's actually an advantage to fasting 1 or 2 days a week to keep our metabolism guessing. Partial intermittent fasting. So a couple days a week, you could just have a cup of tea or coffee with some fat in it.
Dark chocolate?
And some dark chocolate. But you don't want sugar on a partial fasting day. So might just be cocoa with coffee and some healthy fat. So a couple days a week. But the other days, what we really want for breakfast is protein, because that revs our metabolism. So if you have issues with weight control, adding protein for breakfast, 20 grams of protein, like in a shake, or 2 to 3 eggs, revs your metabolism and gets your body going, so it helps with weight loss. So I like the idea of a shake for breakfast, a protein shake with some blueberries and almond milk, and it should taste fantastic.
Now, are you from Florida originally?
I'm originally from Washington State,
Wow.
and I heard about orange juice
You
as
knew where
a
I was
kid
going.
from Florida.
Yes, this is the Sunshine State, and one of the first things we do when we move to Florida is get a driver's license, a license plate, and on that license plate is an orange. And very important agricultural industry in our state. How do we feel about orange juice?
Well, eat the orange and skip. The juice is just like soda.
It's a lot of sugar in
It's
orange
just
juice.
sugar. I mean, you're just going to ruin your metabolism by having orange juice in the morning. One extra cup of orange juice a day, and the average person gains about 8 pounds of body fat. 2 footballs of fat to have a glass of orange juice every day. I'd say eat the orange. Buy an orange, grown in Florida, and eat it. And that'd be a good thing to do. We should do that. I'd be happy doing that every day. But I'm not a big fan of orange juice. Or any sweet juice. Apple juice would be the same thing. An apple juice or a soda, I mean, come on, what's the difference?
We should be maybe considering blending or having a
Well,
smoothie.
a smoothie's awesome. So put some fruit in a blender with some protein. Now you've got something that tastes wonderful and is really good for you.
It has all that fiber in it,
Has the
doesn't it?
fiber,
From
the
from
protein,
skin and
the
the meat.
hydration. I like using unsweetened almond milk. So almond milk, some fruit, a little protein, push blend, 2 minutes. I have an awesome breakfast. I feel satisfied all morning.
That's great. Well, that makes me feel better about Florida and agriculture in Florida because sugar's on the fence here, but at least we can eat the oranges. How about milk? That's another one that we grew up from a very young age, having our moms probably told us, and I know mine did, have a glass of milk every day. It helps keep our bones stronger. And as women, we get older and we have to keep that calcium up. We're supposed to drink a glass of milk a day, for that vitamin D. How do we feel about fortified foods nowadays?
Well, there's not much vitamin D in milk.
Okay.
We need 2,000 a day, and there's 100 in milk. So if you got 20 glasses a day, you'd be good. That's not going to happen.
Who does that here? Nobody,
So
right?
it's not, the vitamin D thing is just kind of like a little window branding. So what about dairy? So 15% of people are probably dairy intolerant. They have GI symptoms. They don't tolerate dairy protein. A lot of adults are lactose intolerant, so they don't tolerate milk. They get gassy, bloated. So probably half adults don't do as well with milk. 15% don't do well with any dairy. But dairy's still a good source of calcium, of protein. And my favorite sources of dairy are going to be if we turn it into a probiotic. So if we let bacteria eat the sugar and get rid of the lactose, and then so the sugar's gone and we get the protein and the calcium plus a probiotic for our gut. We need trillions of bacteria and microbes in our gut to stay healthy, trillions. And we need to eat some every day. So I think yogurt and kefir, I actually like kefir. It's like liquid yogurt with more strains of bacteria. Those are milk that have been converted. The sugar's been consumed, and we replace the sugar with a healthy probiotic, which really nourishes our gut. So I'm happy. If you're not in that 15% of people who are dairy intolerant, if you are, then avoid it. But if you're in the 85%, I think we should have a serving of like plain yogurt or plain kefir every day and add some fruit to it or something else to make it palatable.
But we should be adding the fruit, not letting the manufacturer.
We should be adding, this drives me insane. What has more sugar in it, ice cream or fruit-flavored yogurt? What would you guess? Fruit-flavored yogurt is the correct answer. You don't need extra sugar. We're already getting plenty.
So we can just add our own
Up
blueberries
to
or our own
5 to 7
strawberries.
teaspoons of sugar added to a yogurt. That's ridiculous.
That is a lot of yogurt and sugar. Sugar in yogurt, pardon me. And I've started seeing kefir in the grocery stores more often. So
Yeah.
it's not as hard to come by as it was at one point.
It's pretty easy to find plain kefir now.
Can you use that? Do you have a recipe with that in there?
I just made one yesterday, actually, at
Wow.
home. I was just typing one up. So,
It's not in the book, so can you share it with us?
well, you could, in my smoothie, I will now pour in kefir. I'll put in a half cup of kefir into my smoothie. So a cup of almond milk, a half cup of kefir, about 3/4 of a cup of frozen cherries, and 2 scoops of vanilla protein powder. And it's just wonderful. So it's nourishing, it's healing your gut, it's healing your brain.
It's doing things for us.
It's doing things for us, and it tastes fantastic.
That's great. I spoke of it earlier. There's so much information out there, and it's difficult to even start to think about unlearning the things that we have learned over the years from our parents, from our school teachers, from trusted media sources, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes it can even be a little bit more expensive to eat this way, or it seems when you go to the grocery store that the better yogurt without the sugar might be a few pennies more, or the cage-free organic eggs are a little bit more. The other things are just faster, easier, less expensive choices to make. How does the average person who may not be a doctor or somebody like myself who works in the healthcare industry filter through all of this information and sort of slow down and make better choices?
Well, it's hard.
It is.
It is
very
hard. It's very confusing. There's constant misinformation. All these conflicting industries are trying to confuse you intentionally. You need a guide. So, I mean, Smart Fat would be a really good guide, not to be self-promotional, but that would be a really good guide to help cut through. I mean, it should make sense. I mean, it shouldn't be processed. It should be natural food, and the more you process it, the worse it is, and that's just common sense. So there's a lot of common sense to it. But people really do need a guide out there today. I mean, that's why I write a blog every week from my website, trying to help people. How do you make the right choices when stuff comes out in the media? How do you interpret it? That's a very difficult, like eggs. Eggs are double the price to get cage-free organic, but we're still only talking 30 cents an egg. So 2 eggs is 60 cents. Yes, it's double, but come on, we can afford, live it up, 3 eggs, 90 cents. It's still less than $1 for a meal. And that's the high, good quality eggs. So, I mean, but I try to give lots of tips, like things like frozen fruit and frozen vegetables are a lot cheaper than regular. That vacuum-packed wild salmon that you buy at Costco or Sam's Club is a lot less expensive than the stuff that's frozen and fresh. So there's dozens of things you can do to make the economics of this work.
When I was doing a little poll at work, I involved everybody in my office, because as I said, I was a little nervous, so I tried out a lot of these questions at work, and one of the questions that came up as a counterpoint was sometimes doing it yourself like this isn't as flavorful. It's a little bit more bland, but you have a solution for that also, and a healthy solution.
Well, we have to add more flavor, so I think I was doing I started in 1991 doing programs for diabetics and heart disease and meeting with groups of people and trying to get them to change what they eat. And I told them how many grams of fat and how many this of that. And one of the women, literally, she took me by the hand like this and she goes, "If you'll just write recipes, that's all I'll make and that's all we'll eat." And I went, and it was like a light bulb went off that yes, what people need are recipes that are easy to follow. You can buy the ingredients at your local store and they taste fantastic and they're good for your heart, brain, and soul. And that's been my mission now for over 20 years. So that, I think, is what makes the difference. It's getting back to just choosing what are the right foods we should eat. Let's just focus, and then you get to pick of these foods, which ones do you like, eat them more often, and then give you recipes that makes it simple and easy. That makes people successful.
You have, in the book, it speaks of fat, and then it speaks of how important fiber is. And I'll bring up the dark chocolate example again. Fat, fiber, and flavor. It doesn't have protein, but we were on the topic of flavor, and a lot of the herbs that we should be using are also have healthy benefits.
Yes, Italian herbs, ginger, garlic, curry spices. They're very anti-inflammatory, so they slow aging. They block oxidation, so they prevent you from rusting. And they add flavor. So it's really one of the rare win-win-wins where it's really good for your health. It makes it easy and fun to cook, and the whole house smells wonderful. And it's really good for you. So we must, absolutely must, for your health and for the flavor of your food, learn to use more spices and herbs. And I think it's a really challenge to teach people how do you combine oils and spices in a way that doesn't damage them, that doesn't hurt them, that's make sense that's going to make your food taste better. Just make it smart. And that's really what this is about.
I think it's great that we have, Dr. Masley is not only a physician and a fellow with the American Heart Association and many accolades, but he's also a chef. So he totally knows how to make this real for all of us. Please join Dr. Masley and I in the Nutrition Center, AKA cafeteria, for a meet and greet and a book signing. Thank you again, and I'd like to congratulate the Foundation Library on 25 fabulous years serving the community. Thank you. You did too. Of course you did. Well, would you like to review these before we go out there?